Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on Spike Peak Pass, playing as the Wood Elves against the High Elves. And this is such a most common counterpick. So this strat, obviously you guys have seen it before, but I really wanted to demonstrate this game, and I thought it was pretty fun, and really showed how this strat, even if you don't get the most ideal sort of matchup or the most situation, how it can kind of work out. So regardless, 5 Dryads vanguarded forward to provide a buffer zone in case my opponent's Dragon Princes, Illyrian Reavers, Dragons, anything like that. They are just simply here as a buffer and to muck up my opponent's front line, be a nuisance, and beat up on Spearmen. They're backed up by a single Branch Wraith who does have a slight self-boosting ability here. He does have the other Trickster Shard, which helps Dryads, helps your friendly Dragons and all that sort of stuff, because it does reduce enemy magic resistance by 22%, which is a pretty significant number. Backed by, of course, Earthblood, I did bring Melgoth's Miasma and Penumbral Pendulum just to nuke down enemy lines, because oftentimes you'll find High Elf troops in lines. Also, called the Woods for that extra melee attack. Behind them, 2 Way Watchers, who will almost immediately start teeing off on the Illyrian Reavers, who in turn will be teeing off on the Dryads. And that's another thing, with the Dryads, if they're here, it means they're going to be the first to take a volley from artillery, arrows, that sort of stuff, rather than your more valuable targets if your opponent left them on auto fire. So we do have a Glady and 2 Forest Dragons up here in the air. The Glady, of course, is coming in with Prayer of Anathema, as well as the Arrow of Kurnus. And yeah, so that's basically, this build is at this point, my go-to counter High Elf build, because it works rather well. So for my opponent, he did decide to bring a Prince, and you will get counterpicked so often by High Elves, and it's really rather frustrating. The Prince is coming in on a Sun Dragon, so it's the discount variant. Nothing much to say for it. It's basically the worst version of the Glady, or the worst version, I guess, of the Prince or the Dragon. Either way, they're probably about comparable with the Glady, I guess. That's probably not worse. Either way, he does have Stand Your Ground, Deadly Onslaught, and Foe Seeker. He's backed by a Frostheart Phoenix here. And as you can see, he also does have a Lore Master of Hoeth on the ground, providing quite a decent amount of support spells. So you've got Wiston's Wild Form, actually, it does look like he's got a full assortment of spells. So you've got Earthblood, Wiston's Wild Form, Melgoth's Miasma, Spirit Leech, Harmonic Convergence, and Shem's Burning Gaze. So the full assortment, even got Blessed Tome for extra leadership, and Lore Master's Cloak for 22% magic resistance, undoing the magic bonus from my Branch Wraith. So interesting pick, but actually pretty potent against the Dryads. And of course, he can hack and slash his way through any Wood Elf infantry with his bonus versus infantry, his AP, and his decent armor. My opponent does have 4 units of Spearmen, who are buffering for 2 units of Lothern Seaguard with shields. So these guys are very good against High Elves, because High Elves struggle to break through the silver shields on these guys, and High Elves don't have enough of a range edge to really deal with them. Finally, a single unit of Swordmaster of Hoeth is there to kind of win the front line fight. They'll dumpster basically any Wood Elf infantry in a straight up fight pretty decisively. Then my opponent does have 2 units of Illyrian Reaver archers, who you can see are already taking some withering fire from the Way Watchers. Though my opponent does decide to dive in here on the Dryads with his Prince, who of course does fire damage, which has a bonus against the High Elves. You can see over here my Branch Wraith getting nuked by Spirit Leech as I do pile in. Unfortunately, these Dryads decide not to move, and I'm not sure why. But regardless, you can see I'm using these Dryads to zone away my opponent's Illyrian Reavers as the Way Watchers start to unload on the Prince. And now originally I was trying to get a Prayer of Anathema off, keep him in place, but it didn't go off for some reason. Regardless, the Glady does dive in. She's in melee mode with her 2 dragon buddies. Of course, they don't have the benefit to they actually started getting debuffed by the melee attack debuff from the Frostheart Phoenix, which is a little unfortunate, but with Way Watcher fire pouring in with all that damage output, they are able to kind of overwhelm the Prince here, just beat the snot out of him. And you can see his HP tanking. Prayer of Anathema just go down to the Illyrian archers, who are now trapped in the open against the Way Watchers, and this is really not where they want to be. My opponent had been hoping to shut down my Way Watchers, but now he's just getting death and destruction rained upon him, and you can see all those arrows from the Way Watchers, and the Way Watchers are very precise, just raining in and annihilating those troops. While down here, the Prince does go down in a pretty brutal sort of gooning for him. Unfortunately for me, though, the front line is not going in my favor at all. You can see over here the Lore Master of Hoeth will decisively sway this fight in my opponent's favor. You can see the Branch Wraith has routed. My Way Watchers firing at these Illyrian Reavers as the Glady and the Dragons do take off to provide some support. The Illyrian Reavers actually do get routed off here. Not entirely sure if they got snagged by the Branch Wraith. Regardless, they do decide to flee. And I'm using my Way Watchers right now to zone away the most critical, the most dangerous units. I have not used a single breath attack yet, which is important to keep in mind. I do hit these guys with Melgoth's Miasma, just trying to slow them down, make them a little more vulnerable. But now the Frostheart Phoenix has broken out of the Dryad encirclement and is now pushing into my main line. So the Way Watchers trying to shut him down. So it's a little unfortunate. You can see a Shem Sweeper and Engage there plowing into my Force Dragon, but in my turn I do get a lovely cast of the Penumbral Pendulum and just tear through these Swordmasters, tear through these Spearmen, and do some huge work. Unfortunately, of course, these Dryads do not have a good day afterwards as they get slaughtered pretty badly. Now, at this point, you can see the front line is basically over. Over here, these Dryads are getting slaughtered in the pits. Over here, these Dryads are going to win the fight against the Spearmen, but after that, they can't really bust through these Lothran Seaguard who are mowing through these Dryads over here. And over here, the Way Watchers, though, are picking away at the Swordmasters, and you see the Dragons over here chase away the Froststar Phoenix, and then are going to turn around to go help with the Spearmen. You can see these Dryads and the Branch Wraith will easily be able to hold these guys up, and I do get a little cast of Earthblood. Bit of a mistake. Honestly, I should have waited a second to get the Dragons in there too, but it's okay. We are going to get a lovely little route between Terror and the Dryads' damage, and these Spearmen are going to fall apart very, very quickly. In turn, the Swordmasters will join them on the retreat. This way, they are going to lose their shield bonus, and the Way Watchers, who still have a decent amount of ammo, are going to have an absolute field day. For my opponent, he's got several troops bogged down by a single unit of really battered Dryads over here. Obviously, like I said, they're not going to win. They're getting completely mauled, but it's okay. Over here, once again, the Illyrian Reaver Archers desperately trying to interfere, trying to intervene, trying to get a few shots there on the Way Watchers, but it's not going to make a difference. You can see that Way Watcher fire just pouring in and completely dumpstering these guys, and they really don't stand a chance against Way Watcher fire. So I'm not even sure the Dryads who do try to intercept them. My opponent does have them break last second, but yeah, these guys get routed. Over here, the Dryads did get pressured off, though, by the Lothran Seaguard. You can see all of these guys routing. So the Dryads are basically offline. You can see these guys, 17 models, 30, but very low on HP, and 23. So all of these guys are in terrible shape. Over here, these Dryads had 45 models trying to interdict these spears. And over here, I did make a bit of a mistake. I sent all the Dragons to chase off the Swordmasters. Finally, I do decide to kind of stop and shift targets a little bit, and I'll start pulling these guys back, but honestly, I really didn't need to be chasing this far. I could have had my Dragons back here helping. The Branch Wraith over here, though, holding his own. You can see my opponent is kind of pulling this Loremaster back to support his Lothran Seaguard, trying to make a little bit of a Helm's Deep, the last bastion there, the last bastion of High Elfdom. But these Spearmen do get hit by Melkoth's Miasma, and as they try to pursue the Way Watchers, they're getting peppered from all sides. The Dryads are closing, and it's just rough stuff. Over here, the Froststar Phoenix does dive in on the Way Watchers, nets himself about 7 kills or so, but it's really not going to be enough. These Way Watchers just don't care. He's way too low on HP, and you can see as he's trying to flee, he's getting peppered down by that precision fire from the Way Watchers, and as he does pull back, he's actually going to get sniped out of the air, and we're going to get a few little, you can see those individual shots, and I do like that how the Wood Elf fire kind of comes in slowly but surely as each kind of takes his aim, and down goes the Blue Pigeon. So poor guy, but dead, and very, very dead. Either way, over here the Spearmen are getting overwhelmed by the Dragons. The Dragons obviously not ideal against Spearmen. They've only got 50 armor, and 20% physical resist isn't the greatest thing ever, but it's enough. And you can see over here I do get a nice little Arrow of Kurnus on these Lothran Seaguard, knocking off about actually quite a bit, more than I realized at the time, about 20 models. So if you get a nice little angle like that with the Arrow of Kurnus, you can definitely net yourself a lot of value. And you can see already, of course, those of you who have seen previous videos know what we're going for here, as these Lothran Seaguard do get netted, and the Dragon is moving to a flank shot. So you can see the windup, the death and destruction about to rain down, and of course Puff the Magic Dragon here just roasts these guys, takes off about half their models, and with that my opponent's army is simply going to shatter to army losses. So you guys have probably seen this build before. The reason I'm showing this is not so much, it's not to kind of show this build, well, it is to show this build off, but it's not to like put anyone down or brag, but really, I see this pick a lot, and it's something I see a lot of people not necessarily complain about, struggle with, and is the High Elf versus Wood Elf matchup. It's very difficult for the Wood Elves with most builds, because the High Elves just have you beaten in so many ways. They can outshoot you in a straight-up fight, obviously. If you can kite them, and if you're super good with micro, it's doable, but being that good with micro is very, very hard. They can out-melee you in most ways. If you invest in a whole bunch of Eternal Guard, you're going to struggle defending your flanks, especially if you invest in Veteran Up Eternal Guard. It's just very difficult. Your cavalry can't go toe-to-toe, and plus they have access to nets. They've got access to They've got access to Illyrian Reavers, which are really strong and really tough to shut down. And they can harass your backline. They've got access to Dragon Princes, which can close the gap very quickly. If they get a charge off on Wild Riders, they'll catch them because their baseline speed is like 78, to the Wild Riders 85. So it's a very rough life for the Wood Elves against the High Elves matchup. And as a person who honestly gets sick of seeing probably well over half my games against High Elves, as Wood Elves become a fight against High Elves, it's Um, really, the strat I think is something that might help some of you guys out and be something that gives you a greater fighting chance against the High Elves. No matter what your opponent brings, if they decide to bring Dragon Princes, which are a pretty common pick here, you can net them with Bear of Anathema and dive in with dragons. You always want to focus your dragons on single targets, pick them apart. In the meantime, your dryads are basically just cannon fodder. They're there to tie the enemy down. Keep in mind this whole investment in the dryads. There's 5 of them and the branch wraith, but the branch wraith is more of a support tool. So really consider the 5 dryads as your cannon fodder. You might even want to keep your branch wraith back a little bit. But the dryads are there to tear through spears, to give you a anvil if you start using your dragons later in the game for rear charges. But mostly they're just there to muck enemies up. If your opponent has multiple dragon princes, let's say they brought 2 or 3, you can throw the dryads into the grinder. And really, between Prayer of Anathema, you can net 1 unit, have your Way Watchers shred those Dragon Princes. In the meantime, your dragons can be shutting down a separate unit of Dragon Princes. And between that, you should be able to juggle around and shut down your opponent's heavy cav. If your opponent goes very infantry heavy, like what you see here, oftentimes you'll see defensive geometry, new boxes, whatever you want to call it. That is a very common tactic against the Wood Elves who struggle against it. You can break it with Dragon Breaths, you can break it with Penumbral Pendulums, you can charge in with Dryads who will tie your enemy down, and in the meantime your dragons can swoop in. Keep in mind your dragons have 45% damage mitigation against the High Elf missiles, and that is before you consider their armor. So keep that in mind. Now this might change a little bit with Sisters of Avalorn, but at the same time Sisters of Avalorn are incredibly expensive and Way Watchers will shoot them down. So I think this strategy will remain viable even after the High Elves get change or get buffs and new regiments around and shenanigans like that. But really, I think this is a very very functional strat against the High Elves, and you could see how much the breath attacks did. The dragons managed to snipe out the enemy prince on a dragon, and just flexing around. And if you need to later in the game, you can start dividing your dragons up, sending them to help in key fronts. But in the early game, you kind of want to wipe entire units out, or almost entire units out, with your dragons. Take advantage of your breath attacks. This was something I didn't really do in this game because I saw my opportunity with the prince and dove on it. But normally, let's say you're fighting someone who doesn't have a if you're fighting someone who doesn't necessarily have a lord in the air, if you're fighting someone who doesn't get so greedy, say with Tyrion, then Tyrion's a pretty common pick, so Tyrion or like Teclis, and they're staying on the ground. You can use your breath attacks to wipe entire enemy formations out, melt their top tier troops, melt their Lothan Seaguard, melt their Swordmasters. Use your Way Watchers to snipe key targets that are difficult for you to get at, that are potentially dangerous. Know your prioritization, and this build can do wonders. And I know this was a little ranty, but really, I'm hoping this helps you guys out, because I think this is a difficult matchup for the Wood Elves. I think it's a really frustrating matchup, because all too often, it's one of those things with a quick match, because there's counter picking. You see it all the time, and it makes it hard to have fun with Wood Elves. If every single match you go into against High Elves, you're barely scraping by, or you're losing, and people are constantly counter picking you with High Elves. It's really frustrating, it's really unfun, and it takes away a lot of the pleasure from the game. So hopefully this helps you guys out. I think this is a very efficient and effective strategy to crush High Elves. And I do think there's counterplay. I don't think it's an unbeatable strat at all for the High Elves, but it's just that based on what the High Elves usually bring into your games, this strategy works very effectively, and so I hope this helps you guys out. So regardless, great game to my opponent Rochi. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I really hope this helps you guys out. This is more than a lot of other my other videos. Generally, I just do I like to cast and have fun with it, and I obviously hope you guys have fun watching them and all that, but I think this one is, more than anything, is one that I really, because I think it's a really rough matchup, and I really hope it helps you guys out. So yeah, as usual guys, if you have any comments, criticisms, if you disagree with me and think the strat doesn't work, or if it's not as effective as I think it is, sure, leave your remarks down below. I'd honestly love to hear your guys' input, but I do hope if you found it helpful. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below, and as usual guys, I appreciate you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye for now.